and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchist Dave. Tonight I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted. How you doing this fine lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing good. Under the Dome, character background hooks unique to D&D and TTRPG settings. I think I have an extra T.
I'll be the extra tape.
There you go. There's our extra
Ted's
T.
tabletop.
When it comes to Under the Dome, I kind of like designed that setting with the idea of here's a bunch of things for the players to try to do. Here's the primary thing, but there's other things as well. And the primary thing coming up with it was the idea you're a character in this world. You would be part of kind of a motorcycle gang, club, crew, whatever you want to call it. And you would leave the safety of the dome and go out and you would scavenge for, get the crystals, the raw grind, bring it back to the city, turn it in, get paid. Also maybe get some more grind to keep your ride going. And like, that was good. That was like, conceptually, that was like the primary motivator for it. You're a grind scavenger.
Right. We did not stop there. It went in a multitude of directions, primarily because of your particular DMing style of you're just going to throw out a whole bunch of hooks and whatever we latch onto is where the story winds up going. Which means for every hook that's put out there, like that's potentially a story, potentially something that's going on, but it becomes canon for the world. It becomes something that we have the ability to explore later, should we so desire. And as we got to see more of the world and invest more of it, more people put thought patterns, more people saw this, which, you know, led into a long hook with flesh warping and a long hook, these three hags or the three Maggies, and so many other things.
Yeah, and like a lot of stuff came out of session 0 too, right? Like the players were like, well, if there's motorcycle, there should be street racing. I'm like, yeah, there should be street racing, right? So like, and then some of them were like, well, I want to be part of a gladiator school, and that's like part of my background, and that's my character's history. So I'm like, all right. And two other players are like, yeah, I want to do that too, right? It started expanding upon like what was in the city, what was going on. But these also become hooks for the players where it's like, okay, you have the scavenger hook, which they played with a little bit. And when they're outside the city, if they get the opportunity, they still do that. It's in the group's DNA, even though they went in different directions. But then like you have this interpersonal conflicts between different motorcycle gangs, whether they're above board or they're outlaws, it doesn't really matter. They all race, and they all race for different reasons. And it's kind of cool because like these generate hooks for the players to latch onto and get involved with. And they're like, and from that, they start deciding like, we don't like this, we don't like that club, and we've got beef with these guys, and these guys have beef with us, right? So it just creates these intricacies of like, social power relationships based around racing motorcycles. Now, because of the gladiator tie-in in the campaign that I ran, like the players wanted to visit the gladiator schools. They wanted to be involved. Master Dyson was very important to one of the characters. So he would constantly reminisce, he quotes him, even going back. If the players ever capture something alive, there's at least one player that always kind of asks, well, should we send them to the gladiator schools to entertain and learn the art of being a gladiator? Definitely in the case of they ended up with 3 troll orphans somehow.
You set us against a set of trolls, and we're like, all right, can we follow back to the lair? And you're like, hey, you find three babies. Lo and behold, it's like, all right, trolls in the arena. That'd be a dangerous thing.
So also you have, at least in Crestalia, the rulership is the grind barons, right? They each have different spheres of influence within the city. So each one of them kind of comes with their own plot hooks that you can feed into the characters. Or maybe one of the players have background. Maybe they're not a noble per se, but they could still belong to the house or work for a house, right? And with that is going to come certain responsibilities, obligations, and perhaps even risks. But if a player wanted to take that in and kind of make them more part of the world, it could definitely do that. That would be a fun character concept. Or one that is actually higher up in house and is a noble, has station, but they kind of hide that fact from everybody else, and they're kind of like slumming it, living like scavengers or racers, just because they like the excitement.
And that excitement, you know, kind of builds. We really got into the racing, and there's been 2 years of playing. There's been a handful of races that had to happen, and you know, it makes the dynamics interesting because typically in a game like D&D, we don't get to race vehicles. The best you might get would be trying to flee from a boat. Like you're in one boat and then you're trying to get away from the other. I think it's the closest to a vehicle race as I've seen.
Yeah, and we've had a few different ones, different scenarios, which has been throughout the DNA of this campaign. But there's so much more too. Like, you know, one of the ideas was you could be a caravan guard because there are caravans, but they travel underground instead of on the surface. While being underground doesn't necessarily make you immune to the effect of chaos storms, they're less likely to happen beneath the surface. Although they're probably far more dangerous when they do happen. There's more things for the chaos to kind of interact with and cause cataclysmic failure in the tunnel that you happen to be in. Also, you're in a confined space. If it brings forth something dangerous, much harder to flee or get away.
Of course. I mean, it's monsters. That's going to happen.
So when you think of Under the Dome, and I know you've been doing a lot of work in the setting, what are you thinking for hooks that you feel like are specific to what you're working on?
So like I would go in a direction of like the merchants in this world have to be different. If you're traveling from city to city, you're not going to be just some pushover because you're either traveling a long ways underground, which we haven't done a whole lot of investment of what is the underground like, because other than a couple of dungeons, it's always been above the surface, or we're looking at the underground of the city, and you don't go overground in between city to city because that's far too dangerous and opens you up to too much chaos storm activity. So like that's something I feel like that needs to be looked at. When you look at the term noble in D&D, like that has a vastly different meaning, because like how much are the cities talking? And if this city is an oligarchy and this city is a kingdom and this city has got an emperor, what does it mean to have the term noble? So like that's one I feel like isn't quite fitting as a translation from city to city or dome to dome. A lot of these things need to be kind of bent and twisted. You know, we've talked about this being a very industrial setting. What kind of extra magic does that actually have access to? Are there machines that can cast message like a radio to another city? Can they have instant communication from space to space? If so, like, does somebody work on that? So like I'm looking at all of these things to really up the ante and make this world something very different than the campaigns that we've played in the past. So there's a lot of different directions that I could go, and I could probably do a good solid hour or 3 on all the thoughts and things that I want to expand this world with.
Some of the hooks that you're kind of like laying out there, right? Like I made like some areas of interest just kind of outside of the dome for people to kind of go check out if they wanted to, in addition to the other things. Like here's the scavenging thing that a lot of the adventurer types tend to do, or you're going to interact with other racers, or you can interact with the gladiator clubs. And also there's the Brox, which is kind of like the ghetto or the hood, where you can kind of explore the wrong side of the tracks if you want. What kind of stuff you got going on?
So I'm actually been working on that today, because at some point in time I'm going to be running Under the Dome here on the channel. So I was actually looking to put forth a handful of interests out to our players to be like, hey, look, do any of these interest you? And do we want to take 1 or 2 of them and invest our storyline? So I know you put forth in our game the Demon Circus, and that could very easily be its own arc by itself. Getting introduced to it, surviving it, doing a whole thing with it, or that could just totally be like one-off things that happened or not touched on at all. But I'm very interested in exploring more with it. In fact, that is today's blog post. I dropped some information on that today so that it could be added to any kind of campaign world, not just Under the Dome. You didn't touch on this at all, but I've been doing some behind the scenes thinking and working, and because there is a bit of this post-apocalyptic industrial and we have Vargarians in the mix, I'm like, well, what else could we talk about that's alien? And I use that in quotes because technically Aryans have come from somewhere else. They are inspired by the Borg from Star Trek. So I'm like, all right, I want to add a rule set and an element of the game for symbiotes. You can have symbiotes as like a race, you can have it as subclasses, you can have symbiotic magic items. There's all these things that could be done. So I'm like, well, what would symbiotes look like? So I've been exploring a lot with that. So I definitely am putting that into the mix. There's definitely elements of you want to go out and explore and find the different areas around Baleria. There's different elements for that, but Baleria is a council of wizards. And these 5 wizards are all highly independent in the things that they do, and they all have roles to keep the city moving forward. And it's a lot of work, but all of them are like completely the typical greedy wizard, and they just want to rule it all. They don't want to have to rely on the others. An optional plot line would be, oh, do you guys want to go work for one of these wizards to try and finagle ways so that they gain more power and try to get rid of one of these other wizards, or one or more of the other wizards, because they all have these ingrained subplots of what they want to do if they get more power, and it's all connected to the individuals that are stopping them. One wants to just completely enslave the constructs that are there and have them working until they fall apart, where the other one is like, oh, I am a construct, and I want to find a way to imbue these non-sentient constructs with sentient so that they have more freedoms and abilities and what have you. So like they have multiple layers of like antithesis goals, which I had a lot of fun kind of creating for each of these individuals.
Yeah, so it might be fun to like have each player have a connection to one of the different wizards, and like the wizards are scheming and come up with a reason to send all of them out together on an adventure, quest, mission, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately the idea for the wizards have is that their particular pawn is going to betray the rest to whatever the goal is, to make sure it benefits them wholly. right? They're all kind of like playing this like poker game where everyone's cheating, right, at the game per se, which that could be interesting, especially like because the different wizards have different areas of concern that might affect the players. But it could also be fun to explore from the player side of like, do you stay true to your mission? Do building up camaraderie and friendships happen along the way, making it much harder to betray the others? Or maybe they just start to see the wizards in a different light. Or maybe they want to be the ones to betray the wizards at the end, right? And take over their stuff.
That's a very rough style game to run, and it really requires a lot of buy-in from the players, from all of the players, in order to run that, because like that's traditionally not the style of game that I would run, because it does require a lot of deception. And some people that I've played with, they'd be like, all right, well, this dude is working for like my direct rival. Because like if you look at the 5 wizards, like they have like this, it's the star pyramid. So each one is kind of against 2 others, where the other 2 are kind of like neutral, but they still want them all gone because they're not all on my side. So like, what's to stop it from like, all right, well, I'm just gonna off the ones that are my direct rival.
Yeah, that part becomes tricky. You definitely need to put in place mechanisms that keep that from happening. Whatever the goal is, you need all of you to accomplish it. Like you can't get to the end without the rest of them. Because like, if it's the last session or 2, who cares if it all goes to shit, kind of, and the chaos ensues, right? But I get what you're saying. Like you don't want to happen too soon, so people can't enjoy the game. That wouldn't be fun for the player that gets offed or whatever. It would be tricky, and like figuring out the mechanisms and incentives to not do that kind of shenanigans would definitely be something you would have to invest in. There's some ideas for Under the Dome hooks for your specific D&D and TTRPG campaigns. Feel free to steal them for other settings, or homebrew, or wherever you happen to be playing. Look to the website, you can see articles that are being written by Nerdarchist Ted about Under the Dome, and also he'll be running a game on the channel before too long. And with that,